Okay, day 4 homework, quiz 1 review. I'm going to do several problems that you might need help going over. So the first one here, number 3, 3n plus 5 squared. I'm going to rewrite that problem as 3n plus 5 times 3n plus 5. I'm going to use the distribution method for this problem. So first I'm going to distribute 3n times the first term in the second parentheses. That is n, 9n squared. Then I'm going to distribute to the second term. So 3n times 5 is 15n. I also have to remember to do that with the second term in the first parentheses. So 5 times 3n is 15n. And 5 times 5 is a positive 25. I'm not yet finished because I do have some like terms. If I look here, I have some like terms, 15n plus 15n. I can combine those to simplify the answer to 9n squared plus 30n plus 25. And that gives me my simplified final answer for number 3. Next, I'm going to skip on down to number 5. It's the same idea, only this time I have a binomial times a trinomial. So I'm going to use the box method for this. So since I have a 2 by 3, I need a 2 by 3 box. So I'm going to make 2 rows with 3 columns. And here on my left, I'm going to write the 8x plus 5. On the top here, I'm going to write my second set of parentheses as 2x squared plus 8x plus 4. Then I'm going to carry out my multiplication. 8x times 2x squared is 16x cubed. Remember to add your exponents on your variables. 8x times 8x is 64x squared. And 8x times 4 is 32x. I'm going to also do that with the second row. 5 times 2x squared is 10x squared. 5 times 8x, 40x, and 5 times 4 is 20. All right, so I'm not finished just yet. I'm going to highlight some like terms. I have some like terms here, and I have also like terms here. So I'm going to combine my like terms to simplify my answer. So my simplified answer, I'm going to write it all out as 16x cubed plus the 10 and the 64 combined to 74x squared, and the 40 and 32 combine to 72x plus the 20. And you should have that for number 5. Okay, the next one I'm going to go over is number 7, where I factor the common factor out of each expression. So let's first look at the coefficients for number 7. I have 8, negative 36, negative 28. So is there a factor that divides evenly into all 3 of those numbers? Well, yes, there is. There is a 4 that will divide evenly into all 3 of those terms. Also, next, notice that each term has variables with an n. So how many do they have in common? They have at least 2 n's in common. So I'm going to write that as n squared. When I divide or factor out 4n squared from each term, I'm going to write the leftover in the parentheses. So there's 3 terms. I should have 3 terms in my parentheses. So 8 divided by 4n squared, what's left over, 8 divided by 4 is 2, and I subtract my exponents, and that leaves me with 3 n's left. Next, I'm going to factor out 3n squared from the second term. Well, negative 36 divided by 4 is a negative 9. And how many n's do I have left over? 4 minus 2. If I cancel out 2, that leaves 2 left over. And then the last term, I'm going to factor out the greatest common factor, 4n squared. Notice the n squareds cancel out, so negative 28 divided by 4 leaves me with negative 7. So your final answer right here for number 7. All right, next let's move to number 9. Notice I have 4 terms for my polynomial. For 4 terms, I'm going to use the grouping method. So let's look at the first 2 factors and see if there is a common factor I can factor out of those 2 terms. It happens to be 3a squared. So if I factor 3a squared from the first term, what I'm left with is 5a. And if I factor 3a squared out of the second term, I'm left with negative 8. For the second group, is there a common factor that will factor out of both of those terms? That happens to be negative 8. Negative 8 will divide evenly into both of those terms. If I do that, I am left over with 5a for the first term. And if I divide out 64 divided by negative 8, I'm left with also a negative 8. Notice here I have common factors of 5a minus 8. So let's write that here, 5a minus 8. And then I'm going to write in my second set of parentheses the 3a squared minus 8. So right here is your final product, your final completed answer for number 9. Okay, the last problem I'm going to go over is number 14. That's where we're going to bust the b. So remember, if we start busting the b, we need to first identify the a value, which is number 5, the b value, which is negative 24, and then the c value, which is negative 36. So I'm going to make a table here with a times c on my left, a times c, which is 5 times negative 36. That gives me a product of negative 180. On the right here is my b value. My b value is negative 24. So I'm coming up with factors that multiply together to get negative 180, but add together to get negative 24. So what are some of those factors? I could have 1 times 180. I could have 2 times 90. 3 times 60. 4 times 45, 5 times 36, 6 times 30, 9 times 20, and there's a couple more, but I'm going to stop there. Notice that I have all positive factors. I need a negative number, so one of these has to be negative. It has to be the larger number because remember it has to add together to equal a negative value. So I'm going to make all of these positive down here on the left and over here on the right, these factors I'm going to make negative. So which one will add to equal negative 24? Well, there's only one of them. If you look right here, this right here adds to equal negative 24. So I'm going to use negatives or positive 6 and negative 30 in my busting the b. Now let's go ahead and rewrite it with the b busted. 5n squared, and I'm going to bust the b, negative 24n, into the two factors that we found that multiply to equal negative 180. So that is positive 6n and negative 30n minus 36. When negative 30n and positive 6n are combined, it still adds up to be negative 24n. So I did not change the integrity of the problem. It's still the same value. I just busted the b into two different factors, 6 and negative 30. So now I can go back to the grouping method, just like we did for number 9. So what factor can I factor out of the first two terms? Well, I can factor out an n from both of them. What's left over is 5n and a positive 6 plus 6. The second two terms, I can do the same thing, negative 30n minus 36. Well, what factor will factor out of those two terms? If you look, both of those terms can have a negative 6 factored out of it. And what I'm left over when I factor out is 5n plus 6. Notice here again I have a common factor of 5n. So let's write that, 5n plus 6. And then here, n and negative 6, I'm going to write in my second parentheses, n minus 6. So this would be your completed answer for number 14.